Welcome to CISO's Insiders podcast, powered by GRC Consulting. In this podcast, we'll be interviewing leading CISOs and security leaders in the industry for light, eye-level conversations. Here, they share advice and tips, talk about their biggest accomplishments and failures, favorite drinks, key influencers, and much more. We encourage you to walk away with at least one insight that will help you better yourself or your business. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more content, please check us out on social media.
Welcome, everybody. Today I'm speaking with Brenley Veater. Brenley is the cybersecurity director of cybersecurity over at Cingo Solutions. And Brenley, taking a look at your resume, I see that you've been with the company for 4 years. Maybe you could, introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your journey so far.
Yeah, definitely. First off, thanks for having me. This is a fun opportunity, and one of the big key parts of being director and president is just getting out and making sure that people are educated. So this is definitely a good opportunity. So I have been with Cingo Solutions for 4 years. I've been part of what you would call, the cybersecurity world for 4 years. I was introduced first and foremost just as an admin assistant to our past director, and I just got super curious about basically what cybersecurity is and what they did behind the locked doors with all the servers and all the computers and the security analyst work. So I jumped into it, and I went underneath a few different mentorships and went to school and really just found a love and passion for cybersecurity. So I've been doing it for 4 years, and I've progressed up through the department, and it's been a great journey. I'm currently only 23 years old, so I'm a little bit younger, but most would say that my baptism by fire, right? I jumped into a department that was in kind of a reactive mode, and so there's been a lot of work to be done, but it's been a great journey this far.
Wow, super interesting, and I think you have a very interesting story. Maybe you could tell a bit more about that transition from, I think you mentioned that you started off as an admin assistant. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that transition? Because I'm sure that would be super interesting for other people in the industry that really want to progress. And well, it sounds like you've progressed quite a bit in 4 years. So
yeah, for sure. It was a rapid progression and a major, what I would say, like a glow up through the system. But as I mentioned before, like a baptism by fire as well. The industry is extremely lucrative, but the amazing thing about it is it's unfixed. I'm a firm believer that if you have the passion and desire to fulfill something, to complete something, that you can do whatever you put your mind to. If you put in the work, put in the time, put in the hours. And that's basically what I did. So as you mentioned before, I started as the admin assistant. I would, again, just got super curious about what they did behind the locked doors, and I started asking questions. I think that that's always the first step, is just ask the questions and see if it's something that you're interested in first and foremost. And that really opened a lot of doors for me with my mentors that really showed me, what cybersecurity was, how to, apply, whether that be risk, compliance, security, whatever it is. They all are married, but they're all very different things. So diving into that, I did school on the side, and then I just showed a passion and I showed an interest in it, and I was willing to undergo an internship for 90 days. So I worked 90 days for free, and I really showed that I was interested in it, because it's a dedication. It's something that when you put people in those chairs, you want to know they're going to stick around. And that was kind of my story. And after I took over the department after 2 years as the director. And I was terrified because we were in a reactive mode at the time. We were an MDR solution, so managed detection and response solution, and the department was kind of left in shambles. So I had to do a lot of work to get us to where we are now, which is we are an SIEM, or a System Information Event Management department, and we are SOC 2 certified. So we've come leaps and bounds from where we were before. So it's been a great journey, though.
Well, thank you for that context and sharing your story. And I know you mentioned that you were very curious. You asked a lot of questions, but obviously there has to be. And I think you mentioned your mentors. So I'm assuming
Mhm.
you're talking about people or internal to the organizations that you're in, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
Mm.
Yep. So I initially had a team lead that kind of took me underneath his wing, showed me more of the operation side of things. But then at the same time, when I overtook the department, I actually had a mentor that specialized in business and company culture. That's really what his avenue was. And so, as I was taking over this lead, there were some people with, a decade of experience or so, and they weren't interested in management at the time, but there needed to be management in the organization. So I took over that management role, and I was helping to direct operations, which was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge at that time, and something that was very intimidating, especially at my young age, my lack of experience. But I also knew that if I just jumped into it and I was able to be an effective manager, that we would get done the tasks that we needed to get done. And that's ultimately what it boils down to, is that company culture and making sure that operations run smoothly and you have a great place for people to work.
Yeah, and it sounds like your company did enable you to, take those leaps and bounce. So
Yes.
good for you. Thank you. So, and with that, let's dive into the questions that I usually ask during this podcast. And again, this podcast would be focused about you, not about your company, and about your journey, which sounds to be an interesting one. I always
Mhm.
start off with a couple of icebreaker questions, and I know you mentioned you're very young, but anyhow, can you share your marital status and favorite drink?
Yes. So I'm single. I'm not married, but I do have a little Shih Tzu. Her name is Susie. She's 13 years old and she runs my world. So she's like a little toddler and a spouse combined into one. And my favorite drink is probably a toss up between, the Utah famous Diet Coke or black coffee by like the Pots. So
Got it. Thank you. What's the Utah Diet Coke? Is that something I missed or?
Yeah, no, it's I think it's more of a Utah joke that, every Utah mom drinks Diet Coke, which is true because they don't drink coffee. So it's
Oh, okay, okay.
like it's a running joke, I guess.
Now I get. Okay, got it. Thank you for
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, so, my next question is mostly aimed to an individual that has, a long career. In your case, it would be an interesting one to ask. What's the one thing you wish you'd known when you began your career in cybersecurity?
Yeah, this one I kind of notated that there's no growth in your comfort zone. Um, Again, taking the initiative and taking what was a department that was in reactive mode, that we were kind of in a point where we weren't progressing a lot and we were just reacting to the tickets that came in, reacting to what clients needed at the time. I think that you know looking back then, jumping into things, it was like that was ultimately the thing that led me to success, was knowing that in order to grow, you have to be willing to fail. And if you want to progress anywhere, then you just have to keep failing forward. So, I wish I also understood at that point in time that no degree, no amount of experience, anything can prep you for it can't prep you for the things that are the application process of security and compliance. A lot of times it's really just diving into it and just learning as you go. So ultimately that's something that I wish I would have comprehended a little bit better growing, starting my career.
And speaking about failures, what was your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so as I kind of touched on, when I took the department over, I said 3 years, but it's been 2 years. I'm going to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was relatively new to the tech world. I was a security analyst at the time, and I was just doing the day-to-day operations. I did have some experience with leadership, from my college days and my high school career. So, it was just consistent with failures all the time, failing forward. And so the failures arose basically from a lack of experience and lack of knowledge. However, my tenacity and inability to give up when things got rough, I think that is what allowed me to tackle what was, at least at the time of the department in shambles, and just, cover every single corner, learn every single thing that I can, and then be able to lead and train my team and make the department the way it is now.
What would you say then? So I think it, as a derivative from your answer, I mean, I think we can assume what your biggest accomplishment was, but was there anything in particular that you wanted to highlight here?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge accomplishment. It didn't seem like it at the time because it was, you get so operation focused that you kind of forget the big accomplishments. But that was a huge one. Actually, I would say, kind of going off script here, one of my biggest accomplishments is creating the company culture that we have now today. We have a fabulous company culture. We actually partner with a group called Techie for Life, and they take neurodiverse adults and they teach them the soft skills that they need to know in order to, be productive citizens. And so what I ended up doing was working with them and doing some mentorships, and then I integrated a internship with Techie for Life where these neurodiverse adults could come in, they could learn the security analyst work, and oh boy, did they learn it and did they perform. And they have this great culture where they're able to be themselves and they're able to learn and really grow and be a part of our culture. So it's I would say that's one of my biggest accomplishments, is providing that environment for them and making sure that that not just they, but everyone on my team feels like that they have a purpose, with the company and the business.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Did you want to expand on that organization you just mentioned?
No, they're just, so we're located in St. George, Utah, which is, small town, southern Utah, and they have a fabulous program. As I mentioned, they take in adults just need, a little bit of help with their soft skills. And, a lot of times they're so brilliant. They are brilliant individuals, and they just, teach them, give them an opportunity in tech. And, the partnership with Cingo Solutions, that's the company I work for, has really just allowed them to flourish and do what they're really good at. So.
Okay, nice. And what was the name of that organization again?
It is Techie for Life. That's
okay.
Yeah, yep.
So, looking back at your career, what advice would you give someone who wants to pursue a career similar to yours?
Yeah, the industry is extremely lucrative. It's unfixed. It's changing. So I think the most important thing is you have to be willing to grind. You have to be willing to push barriers. You have to be willing to fail forward. You have to be willing to undergo things that, every day is going to be a new challenge. You have to face it head on. And I think that, the best advice that I can give anyone is, if you are passionate about it and you want to pursue it, you can achieve it. Do not stop, just keep innovating, keep looking, keep moving forward, keep making sure that you are contributing to what is, cybersecurity industry, because there's so much work to be done. So, I think that there's not a finish line to the race. Every analyst, CISO, director, CEO, CTO, we are all learning, and we need to continue to have a learner attitude in order to reach the altitudes it takes to run this race successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And talking about the organizational structure of the CISO versus the IT organization, what are your feelings about the role of the CISO that's actually a part of the IT organization?
Yeah, I think it's a unique role. And it kind of incorporates two opposing things, in my opinion. One is, this management position, and then one is a mind for operations. And so kind of the way that I've been able to look at it is, as a CISO, you have to have a mind for operations, and you also have to be a good leader. You have to have good management skills, which is not always the easiest thing to achieve, especially when you're just trying to get tasks done. But you also have to be worried about how your team is performing and making sure that they have what is, in my opinion, the most important thing, a good company culture. So kind of marrying those two ideas and making sure that as a CISO, you're providing a balance between a good manager and someone that is efficient with the operations. I would say that that's probably the most, most important part about being a CISO.
Yeah, and do you feel there's a tension or a conflict of interest between chief information security officer that actually reports to an IT organization, like a CIO, for example? I'm not sure if that's the case with your organization, but as a trend in the industry, do you have any specific thought about that?
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely a challenge, because something that you have to do as a CISO, as a director, is you have to, go and ask for those funds. You have to make sure that the operations that you are trying to achieve make sense for the organization. Security is an investment. And so, convincing your CTO, your CFO, your CEO even to allocate funds and, see the good in investing in the security and the compliance, sometimes can be, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. There's a great book, and I'm trying to recall the author right now, but it's called Elephant in the Boardroom. That's one that I recently been reading. Have you heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fabulous book, but it definitely breaks down, we have a mind for operations, we have a mind for management as a CISO, a director, but we don't always have a mind for, numbers and maybe, your business, your negotiations that you're trying to achieve. We're just trying to get things done, but you have to have a mind for negotiation in order to really achieve what you want to achieve. And I would say that's, one of the biggest challenges of a CISO, and, trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve for your department and your organization as a whole.
And let's talk a bit about, expanding our conversation about your journey. So you had to learn a lot. A lot of that was probably self-learning. I know you mentioned, some academia there as well. What were the best resources that have helped you? What did your journey look like in terms of how you acquired that knowledge?
Yeah, I would recommend everyone and anyone that is going to step into a role of security, rather that's as a security analyst, or if that's a larger role like a director or an IT manager, to find a mentor. Look for a mentorship to undergo, someone that understands how management works, and then someone that can help you with a mind for operations. Doesn't necessarily have to be, the nitty gritty of how everything works and, the zero and the ones, but it does have to be, you have to have a mind for operations. So I would say that was the biggest asset that I was given when I started my role was my mentorships that I underwent. And, between my mentorships and my leaders, they taught me how to balance the role of, CISO, director, and manager. And that was definitely the best resource that I was given.
Yeah, so the importance of mentorship is highly important, especially if you want to grow in an organization. And obviously you had the chance to experience that firsthand. Do you want to I wanted to talk a bit about common myths in our profession that you can debunk. Do you have anything there to contribute?
Yeah, again, kind of touching on what was mentioned earlier, is that it takes a high level of education. I think that that's a myth. I think that it takes a high level of passion and tenacity in order to do this career. It takes the right kind of personality. It takes a person with drive and a person that's willing to fail forward. I don't think it always boils down to the education, rather, that's your master's or your PhD or whatever it might be. I think that those are all great tools to have in your box, but at the end of the day, it really is up to the person on how successful they're going to be. And I think that that's a common myth that, we're all mathematical geniuses working in quantum physics. It's not really that high level. It's just having the right person in that seat that is ambitious and willing to fail forward.
Yeah, thank you for that insight as well. And let's shift gears and talk a bit. Let's start talking a bit about the industry. We can get started with, what concerns the CISOs mostly these days, in your opinion?
Yeah, I would say, how to effectively lead your team in risk, security, compliance, and privacy terms. Company culture is a large portion of a successful business, and in order to properly service clients in the business-to-business sector, it's imperative that they have a good leader that is at the helm of the ship to make sure that the path to compliance and security is postured correctly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So basically a combination between business skills to technical skills as well as culture. That's
Mhm.
pretty much just sum it up if I heard you correctly.
Yep.
And in your opinion, what are the areas that people that in your position should be focused on these days?
Yeah, I would say it's just that marriage between efficiency and security. I think that especially in the business to business sector, as you start to, service clients and, you're in the, MSSP realm or, your cybersecurity realm, it can be difficult to really marry the two ideas of security and efficiency. And a lot of the times, the business receiving the support and the service wants to have a more efficient system, but unfortunately, at the cost of compliance, you have to, you're implementing security. So really, just marrying those two ideas, I think A is the biggest challenge, but I think B is the most important thing to do is make sure that there is a balance, of equilibrium between security and efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but that says like in general when you talk about the industry, right? So, and
Yeah.
if I were to ask you, if we're talking about the role of the CISO nowadays, as you mentioned, it's a combination between a business type of role to some
Mhm.
technical know-how and
Mhm.
soft skills and all that. And I have seen this transition, in the past 15 years, probably from this role has grown from, a very technical oriented role to a more business oriented role. And
Right.
and I'm assuming, so what you said about these are the skills that every CISO should have nowadays, like a combination of all. But if we look at the industry and where it's going, where do you think this role specifically, the CISO role, is going? Like if you look into the future, like 5, 10 years from now, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that trends kind of tell it all, and you kind of spoke to that already. It's moving from less of a technical role to more of a managerial role because it takes, again, someone that can negotiate to the CEOs, CFOs, to allocate funds for what we're trying to achieve is the role of a CISO. So I think we're going to see a continue in that trend where it's more of a role that leads the team, but also is that business mindset that knows how to negotiate and how to speak as you might say the business lingo. I think that we'll continue to see that in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in your opinion, what will we see in the industry next?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think that there has been a a huge boom in the amount of people that are servicing in cybersecurity. This is again a personal opinion, but I do think that we'll see a regression in providers. And the reason that I say that is because compliance is getting ramped up so much quicker, and compliance can be a difficult thing to understand. So I think as we see, compliance and all these regulatory bodies come out with new regulatory standards, that some people are going to shy away from servicing, especially with, CMMC, a few other things. It can be daunting, and it takes a lot of investment to be able to, service clients to that level. So I do believe that we'll see less providers in the industry, and that's, again, a personal opinion.
Yeah, so less providers due to consolidation or acquisitions, in
Mhm.
your opinion, or just
Yes.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
got it. Okay. Um, in your opinion, who do CISOs nowadays follow, like social media and all that?
Yeah. I mean, I have some really great LinkedIn connections. For anyone that I would say, like, for me, I look for a lot of inspiration through other people, and particularly women in the industry, because it's kind of a hard thing to find women in the industry that are up with the trends and are kind of leading the path. So something that was super helpful for me is I actually attended CyberCon in Salt Lake City, and they had an amazing keynote speaker. Her name was Katie. I cannot remember her last name right now, but just seeing women lead the industry and kind of, again, maybe debunk that myth that it's a male-driven industry. I think that it takes both a male and a female mind in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve in the industry. I would say that that's probably, who I follow most is people that can kind of inspire me to continue to grow and continue to lead in the industry.
Okay, so thought leadership, basically, especially if we're talking about women in the industry. Yeah, and definitely, I mean, recently I've interviewed a bunch of very interesting leaders that might fit the bill. And in your opinion, what would you define as innovation in our space? Is it more along the line of like a new product, a new service, or is it along, a line of like how we do business as cybersecurity, or how we monetize our services?
Yeah, I think it's probably how we do business. Some of the issues that we're facing right now, they are huge issues. We'll just take one, right? The supply chain issue. Huge issue, something that everyone's faced, especially if you're an MSP, an MSSP providing cybersecurity, whatever it might be. Supply chain is a big buzzword, and it is also a big issue. So, I think that we're a unique group of people. And when I say we, I mean cybersecurity professionals. And half the time, if you can't find, someone to provide that service, then you're going to create that service yourself. So I would really like to see, someone kind of lead how we approach the supply chain issue and kind of find our own resolution for it.
Okay. Yeah. And switching gears to our last topic of today, let's talk a bit about vendors. Let's say you were a vendor. What would be your strategy in trying to start building a relationship with a customer that you'd like to work with?
Yeah, I think that that's the key word, a customer you'd like to work with, right? It's making sure that you know your services well enough, the value of your services well enough that you only take on clients that A, you would like to work with, and B, that actually need your solution and need your services. So as a vendor, I work for a company that technically we are a vendor, we are an MSSP, right? And so that's something that we look for when we take on clients. Is this client looking to achieve compliance? That's something that we always look at, because if they're not looking to achieve compliance, then more than likely our services are not going to make sense for them. It might be a waste of money. And I don't want them to waste money. I want our services to make sense for them. And security is an investment. And so they have to see at the end of the road that their time, it's like an insurance policy, right? That, everyone knows they should have insurance, but not everyone does insurance. I'm not sure why, but as soon as you get handed that, that bill or whatever it is, it's like, well, that makes sense. That makes sense why we're paying for insurance. So it makes sense too that, you have clients that are looking to achieve security and compliance, and those are the kind of people, those are the kind of clients that you're going to want. So I think that goes the same for a vendor. Find a client that makes the most sense for you and your services. Be confident in your services.
Let's say I did find a client, and I'm stressing this because I know this is, something a lot of vendors and CISOs on the other side, they struggle with, that cold calling approach that's still been going around in the market today. Let's say you do have a client that you want to engage with, what would be, in your opinion, what would be the best approach in a non-intrusive manner? Because, I mean, we're all tired of that cold approach, whether it's phone calls or emails or LinkedIn, right?
Right. Yeah, I think we're tired of receiving them, and I think everyone's tired of sending them too, and I would love to see us move away from that model, because half the time, especially when you work in security, you think that everything's a phishing attack. And so if someone tries to, reach out, cold call me, then I get worried thinking, that they're trying to fish or scam or smish or whatever it might be. So I would love for us to move away from that. But I think to answer your question, I think that the best methodology moving forward is to show people, what they're investing in, what the product is that you're trying to sell makes sense for them. So for instance, with us, what we offer is we offer a free, 90-day on-site risk assessment. And we kind of go through everything A to Z. We obviously have NDAs, all the forms that you sign. It's in a non-intrusive way that we're able to really understand the organization and make sure that A, our services make sense for them, but B, that if they don't have the services, then, it won't make sense for them either. So that's something that we offer. I believe that that's kind of give them a taste of your services, right? And I think that that's probably the best way to really make sure that it makes sense for you and the client.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And any influential people in the industry or anyone that you look up to? I know you mentioned your mentors. Anyone you wanted to mention during this podcast?
Yeah, I would love to highlight my mentors. So that's okay with you there. They would be so upset with me for highlighting them because they are, they're pretty low key guys. But the CEO of our organization is named Scott Matson, and he has taught me an insurmountable amount of information, from business to, leadership to whatever it might be. He's really been so influential. And luckily he's been that person that's on my team that, I don't have to worry about the elephant in the boardroom kind of deal that a lot of people have to face. It makes sense for him. When I go to him and I ask for funds, whatever it might be, he's on my team. We're on the same team. And then another great mentor that helped me through so much of taking over the department was Greg Matson. And Greg, when I took over the department, I mentioned it was kind of in shambles. It was, honestly. We had, a silo of leadership. We had a silo of information. We were in a reactive mode instead of a proactive mode, which is something that I praise myself on now, is because we are in a proactive mode, which is a hard thing to achieve as an IT department. But, he really showed me, my methodology of getting tasks done, my methodology of, how to lead people, how to make sure we have a good company culture. So I kind of owe it to those two guys. And then my last mentor, also a Matson as well. They're all owners of this fabulous business that I work for. But Tony Matson, he taught me so much about compliance. Compliance is a very hard thing to understand. And a lot of times it's not so much the degree, it's not so much the studying, it's the application process of it. So underneath Tony's mentorship, I was able to complete our SOC 2 Type 2 and our SOC 3 in 2.5 days this year, which is crazy. It usually takes weeks upon weeks. And so, that didn't come without vigilance before and a lot of work, but really just comprehending compliance and knowing what the auditors are looking for cut our auditing time and forth. So, I owe a lot to them. I'm very grateful for them. And as I mentioned before, if anyone is looking for how to get into the industry, look for a mentor.
Yeah, that's definitely something I can agree with. What's the best way to connect with you online then?
Yeah, so I have a few different ways. You can connect with me on my Instagram. It's Brenley V. And I do share cybersecurity tips on there. I also have a nonprofit organization called Be Cybersmart. Be Cybersmart is aimed to educate all demographics on how to be safe online. So you can connect with me through Instagram at We Are Cybersmart or becybersmart.org. We are in the process of solidifying that 501c3 and also coming out with some really fun children's books to educate our children on how to be safe online. So really excited about that. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So Instagram and LinkedIn and becybersmart.org. Thank you. Sounds interesting. I'll definitely look it up. And final question before we wrap this up. If money was never an issue, what would you do with your life?
Is this supposed to be a altruistic question or more of a...
Whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to answer. Yeah, anything.
Unlimited funds, what would you do with your life? I love I love to travel. I love to experience new things. And I think that that's always the silo and the slow down for people is, they unfortunately don't always have those funds. So I would just travel. I would travel everywhere. Luckily with my job, role as CISO, it can be a remote role. And so I would travel, I would do my job, I would continue to grow my nonprofit and really just make change in the world. That's what I would do.
Sweet. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story today. I had a good time having this conversation. I hope, your answers and those experiences that you've shared would resonate with some of our listeners and, anybody would be able to take something from this discussion today. Any final notes?
I don't believe so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brenley.